There comes a point when you stop making excuses for someone's behavior. When the confusion fades, when the weight on your chest doesn't feel like love anymore, but pressure, manipulation, and fear. If you've ever felt like you're giving and giving only to feel emptier with each passing day, this is for you. And today, we're not just talking about how to stop being nice to a narcissist. We're taking your power back, completely. Now let's be clear, this isn't about bitterness. This isn't about revenge. This is about clarity. It's about seeing the truth, maybe for the first time in years, and knowing, deep in your soul, that you deserve more than to be an emotional puppet in someone else's show. It begins with awareness. Because narcissists don't always walk in the room and announce themselves. They don't wear red flags like badges. They show up charming, attentive, even magnetic, at first. But then, slowly, subtly, the air shifts. You start second-guessing your instincts. You start feeling drained after every conversation. You laugh less, you apologize more. You give, and still, it's never enough. One of the earliest signs? Their endless need for admiration. It's not just that they like compliments, they require them. They feed on praise like oxygen. And without realizing it, you become the supplier. You become the emotional battery pack that keeps them charged. But here's the hard truth. No matter how much energy you pour into them, they will never feel full, and you will always feel depleted. And then there's the empathy gap, that aching realization that they just don't care how you feel, that when you're hurting, they find a way to flip the script, make it your fault, or worse, use your vulnerability against you. Ever shared something painful only to be mocked for it later? That's not love. That's emotional warfare. Narcissists operate in a universe where everything revolves around them. Your job? Orbit quietly. Be supportive. Be silent. Don't outshine them. Don't need too much. Because your needs, in their world, are inconveniences. But the most dangerous tool in their kit? Gaslighting. That creeping feeling that maybe you misunderstood, that you're overreacting, that maybe you really are the problem. Gaslighting is not just manipulation, it's mental sabotage. It distorts your reality until you can't even trust your own memory. You'll find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, feeling guilty for asking to be treated with respect. And when they sense you slipping away, when they feel the power dynamic shifting, that's when they double down. They love bomb, they cry, they beg, they promise change, and maybe they do, for a week. Then it starts all over again. Because it was never about fixing anything. It was about keeping control. Let's not sugarcoat it. This cycle is exhausting, it's emotionally violent, and it's designed to keep you small, uncertain, and obedient. You begin to live in a fog. Your intuition whispers that something's wrong, but every time you get close to acting on it, they tug on a new guilt string. They play the victim. They blame their childhood. They bring up all the good times. And you stay, not because you're weak, but because you're loyal, hopeful, and human. But hear this. Loyalty to someone who consistently hurts you is not love. It's self-abandonment. And today, you stop abandoning yourself. One of the clearest signs that you're dealing with a narcissist is this. Everything always comes back to them. If you're struggling, they'll one-up you or dismiss you. If you're excited, they'll downplay it. If you need space, they'll accuse you of betrayal. Their needs, their feelings, their timelines always come first. Yours, they're negotiable, debatable, or ignored. They exploit your compassion, your kindness, your willingness to understand, and before long, you're trapped in a game you never agreed to play, one where the rules constantly change and you always end up the villain. But I'm here to tell you, it's not your job to fix them. It's not your job to keep proving your worth. And it's not your fate to live in emotional survival mode. You have the right to peace, to clarity, to joy that isn't purchased by compliance. And the first step is seeing it, naming it, not denying it, not downplaying it, but saying it clearly. I am being manipulated. I am being drained. This is not love. The moment you speak that truth to yourself, the shift begins. You've seen it now. You've named it. You've stared the truth in the face, and you didn't look away. And with that brave moment of clarity, you unlock the next step, the most uncomfortable and yet the most necessary: setting boundaries. I know, even just hearing the word boundary can stir something uneasy inside, especially if you've spent your life being the one who bends, the one who compromises, the one who always finds a way to give more, stay longer, and love harder, just hoping it will finally be enough. But let me say this as clearly as I can. If you grew up believing that love is earned by sacrificing yourself, then setting a boundary will feel unnatural, maybe even cruel. But it's not. It's the opposite. Setting boundaries is not a rejection of others. It's an acceptance of yourself. You're not doing it to punish the narcissist. You're doing it to protect your peace, your sanity, your future. A narcissist will test your limits constantly, not because they misunderstand them, but because they don't respect them. Your silence is their permission. Your hesitation is their green light. That's why your boundaries must be clear, firm, and non-negotiable. You have every right to say no. No to manipulation. No to emotional debt. No to being someone's emotional punching bag just to keep the peace. But here's where it gets harder: saying no without guilt. See, narcissists don't respond to boundaries with understanding, they respond with offense. They call you selfish. They say you've changed. They accuse you of being cold or unforgiving or too sensitive. Why? Because your boundary interrupts their control. And for someone who survives by dominating others emotionally, that interruption feels like a threat. But hear this: you are not responsible for someone else's reaction to your boundary. You're responsible for enforcing it, not for how they feel about it. Let that sink in. You're not being too harsh. You're being clear. You're not betraying them. You're choosing you. And if they make you feel guilty for protecting your well-being, that's proof of exactly why the boundary is needed. Start small if you must. Maybe it's not answering their texts at midnight. Maybe it's walking away from a conversation that turns toxic. Maybe it's telling yourself, I don't have to explain my decisions to someone who doesn't respect me. Every small act of self-protection is a reclaiming of your worth. You are allowed to leave the room. You are allowed to stop explaining. You are allowed to disappoint someone who is constantly disappointing you. But boundaries aren't just about words. They are about follow-through. Saying, I won't tolerate being spoken to that way, means you walk away when the insults start. It means not answering the call, not showing up, not engaging when they bait you. Because narcissists don't believe in your words. They only believe your actions. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel shaky. You may second-guess yourself. That's okay. You're learning a new way of living. One where your peace comes before their praise. One where your truth no longer gets edited to make someone else comfortable. And here's something no one tells you. When you begin enforcing boundaries, you may lose people. The narcissist may leave. They may rage. They may smear your name. But don't confuse their exit with your failure. It's actually your freedom. Because if someone only stays when you have no boundaries, their love was never about you. It was about control. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. And self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't explain itself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It's quiet, steady, and unapologetically rooted in knowing what you deserve. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you begin to feel something, foreign but deeply healing: peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the peace that comes from alignment, from walking in truth, from standing in your own energy and not absorbing everyone else's chaos, from looking in the mirror and seeing someone who no longer betrays themselves to keep others comfortable. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who refuse to rise to your level. So raise it, not as a punishment, but as a declaration. I am no longer available for one-sided relationships, for confusion, for walking on eggshells. You are allowed to choose you. even when it's messy, even when it's painful, even when the world around you doesn't understand it yet. Because choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred, and it's time. One of the most dangerous habits you can fall into when dealing with a narcissist is this quiet, constant craving for their approval. That moment you pause before speaking, wondering how they'll take it. That ache in your chest when they go cold and distant. That sickening hope that maybe, just maybe, if you say the right thing, do the right thing, be the right person, they'll finally love you right. But here's the painful truth no one wants to say out loud. A narcissist doesn't validate you to uplift you. They do it to own you. Their compliments are never free. Their approval is never unconditional. It's currency, and they expect something in return. When you seek validation from someone like that, you hand them the power to define you. And that's a dangerous game, because their opinion of you changes with their mood, with their agenda, with their ego. One day you're everything, the next you're nothing. One moment you're cherished, the next you're dismissed. They build you up just enough to keep you coming back, and then they pull the floor out from under you, over and over again. You start chasing the height of their approval, thinking if you just try harder, you'll get back to who they were in the beginning. But let me say this as clearly as I can. That version of them was a mask, a tactic, a setup, not the truth. Narcissists use praise the same way they use punishment, to control, to mold you into something easier to manipulate. And if you keep looking to them for reassurance, for recognition, for identity, you will always be starved. Because they will always keep it just out of reach. And that's not your fault. That's by design. The way out? Stop waiting for them to tell you that you're enough. Start telling yourself. Validate your own voice, your own needs, your own truth. At first, it'll feel foreign, maybe even hollow. You'll want to run back to them every time you feel unsure. But don't. Stand still, breathe, and remember, your worth was never supposed to come from someone who benefits from keeping you insecure. You don't need their approval to be real. You don't need their praise to be proud of yourself. Every time you celebrate a small win, every time you speak your truth without asking for permission, every time you stop explaining your choices to someone who doesn't respect you, you reclaim a little more of your identity, a little more of your strength, a little more of your voice. And eventually you realize you don't even want their validation anymore, because you finally see it for what it is: conditional, manipulative, empty. It was never love, it was leverage. True validation doesn't come with strings. It doesn't change when you say no. It doesn't vanish when you stop performing. It stands with you, even when you stand alone. And that kind of validation, it comes from within, from knowing who you are, even when no one else claps, from recognizing that your value isn't tied to how convenient you are to others, from choosing to believe that you're enough, even if they never say it. And let me tell you this, when you stop chasing approval from toxic people, your energy shifts, your posture changes, you stop shrinking, you stop apologizing, you stop begging to be seen. And in that space, you create room for something deeper, something real, something rooted in actual respect, not performance. It won't be easy at first. You might feel guilty, you might feel lost, you might even grieve, because you're not just letting go of their validation. You're letting go of the version of you that thought you needed it. And that's okay. That's healing. That's growth. You are allowed to miss the lie while still choosing the truth. So here's what I want you to remember. You were not born to be molded by someone else's approval. You were born to live whole, to speak freely, to stand tall in your worth, even when it's inconvenient for others. And once you stop seeking their validation, once you stop handing them the keys to your confidence, they lose their grip on you completely. Because the moment you realize you no longer need them to feel valuable is the moment you become untouchable. There's a moment that arrives, quiet but profound, when you realize just how much of yourself you've given away. Not just time or energy, but little pieces of your joy, your peace, your identity, sacrificed bit by bit in the name of keeping the peace, pleasing others, holding it together. Especially when dealing with a narcissist, you become so conditioned to meet their needs, to anticipate their reactions, to stay one step ahead of their next emotional outburst, that somewhere along the line, you forget you have needs of your own, real ones, important ones. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. You stop speaking up. You stop asking for space. You stop pursuing what lights you up. You silence yourself so they don't feel uncomfortable, and you keep shrinking so they don't feel threatened. You rationalize it by telling yourself that you're being understanding, that it's love, that it's temporary. But what you're really doing is abandoning yourself. And that has to stop. Because your needs are not a burden. Your well-being is not negotiable. Your peace is not a luxury to be postponed for someone else's comfort. You matter. Not in theory, not when it's convenient, but always. And the moment you decide to prioritize yourself, to put your mental and emotional health at the top of your own list, something powerful shifts. You begin to see that real love, healthy love, doesn't require you to disappear. It doesn't punish you for taking up space. It doesn't demand self-erasure as proof of loyalty. Real love welcomes your wholeness. But with a narcissist, prioritizing yourself will feel like rebellion because it threatens the imbalance they depend on. They've grown accustomed to your silence, your compliance, your self-sacrifice. And when you finally start to say no, when you stop bending over backward to accommodate their chaos, they will notice. And they will resist. They may call you selfish, cold, unreasonable. They may try to guilt trip you back into your old path. But here's the truth. Saying no is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of courage. It's how you begin to draw the line between what breaks you and what builds you. No is a full sentence. No doesn't require an explanation, a justification, or an apology. You don't owe anyone a reason for protecting your peace. And if someone tries to make you feel guilty for doing what's healthy for you, they were never invested in your well-being to begin with. They were invested in your compliance. And let's talk about guilt for a moment, because it will come. That uncomfortable, twisting feeling in your gut that whispers, maybe you're being too harsh, maybe you're hurting them. But here's what you must understand. Guilt isn't always a sign you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just the emotional residue of doing something different, of breaking a pattern that no longer serves you. You've been conditioned to associate self-care with selfishness, but they are not the same. Taking care of yourself is not abandonment, it's alignment. And the more you practice this, the stronger you become. You start to notice how drained you feel after every interaction that demands more than you can give. You start to recognize the emotional hangover that follows bending your needs to fit into someone else's expectations. You start to feel the difference between being generous and being exploited. And with that clarity, you begin to give differently. You give to yourself first. You fill your own cup before pouring into anyone else's. You say yes only when it comes from a place of desire, not obligation. You say no without flinching, because you've learned that peace is more valuable than approval. And as you walk further down this path, something unexpected happens. You stop feeling guilty. You stop needing to justify your rest, your silence, your distance, your growth. You realize that anyone who demands you destroy yourself to keep them comfortable is not someone who deserves access to you. And that includes friends, partners, even family. Love without respect is not love. Affection without reciprocity is manipulation. And attention without care is performance. You deserve more. You always have. So ask yourself, what do I need? What makes me feel safe? What makes me feel seen? What fills me instead of drains me? These questions are not luxuries. They are lifelines. They pull you back into yourself, into a life where you are no longer on the sidelines of your own story. You are the author again. You get to decide what gets your energy, who gets your time, what habits stay, what patterns end. And if that makes other people uncomfortable, let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is not your emergency. You are not here to babysit someone else's emotions while yours are neglected. You are here to live fully, boldly, without apology. So say no, say yes to yourself, and say it often. Say it louder each time, because your life is waiting for you to choose it, and it begins the moment you stop explaining why your needs matter. They just do. It's easy to take things personally when someone mistreats you, especially when that someone is close, familiar, or once made you feel special. When a narcissist lashes out, belittles you, ignores your needs, or suddenly withdraws affection, the instinct is to look inward, to ask, what did I do wrong? Why am I not enough? How do I fix this? But what if I told you it was never about you? What if their cruelty, their silence, their manipulation was never a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of their wounds? See, narcissists don't act out of love, they act out of fear. Fear of being exposed, of losing control, of not being admired. And because they're trapped in that fear, they lash out at anyone who gets too close, anyone who sees through the facade, anyone who dares to need something in return. Their actions aren't personal, they are patterns. And patterns are not broken by you loving them harder. They're broken by you finally understanding this one thing: their behavior says nothing about you and everything about them. Let that sink in. When they criticize you, it's projection. When they gaslight you, it's deflection. When they ignore your boundaries, it's entitlement. They aren't responding to who you are, they're reacting to their own chaos, their own emptiness, their own refusal to grow. And yet, we carry their pain like it's ours. We internalize their instability as our fault. We replay their words in our heads until they sound like truth. But just because someone said it doesn't mean it's real. Just because someone couldn't love you doesn't mean you're unlovable. You have to stop giving them that kind of power. You have to stop letting someone else's brokenness decide how you feel about yourself. Because the moment you do, you hand over the steering wheel of your own identity, and they'll drive it straight into confusion, self-doubt, and silence. Here's the shift that changes everything. You can witness someone's behavior without absorbing it. You can see the manipulation and still hold your peace. You can hear the cruelty and still know you're worthy. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's the refusal to keep taking responsibility for someone else's inability to treat you right. And that detachment, it's your lifeline. It gives you the space to see clearly, to feel freely, and to stop living in emotional reaction mode. You are not responsible for their triggers. You are not the cause of their moods. You are not the reason for their unhealed trauma. And every time you stop taking their behavior personally, you take a brick out of the prison they built around you. One by one, the wall crumbles, and on the other side, your freedom. Because here's what happens when you stop internalizing their chaos. You gain your perspective back. You start responding instead of reacting. You start breathing again instead of walking on eggshells. You see the game, but you don't play it. You feel the hook, but you don't bite. And slowly but surely, your peace becomes unshakable, not because the narcissist stopped being toxic, but because you stop making it about you. That's where your power lives. Not in changing them, but in refusing to let them change you. Not in fixing their patterns, but in healing your own response to them. When you stop taking things personally, you create emotional distance, and in that space, you find clarity. You find truth. You find yourself. And let's be honest, this isn't easy. It takes practice. It takes intention. It takes being willing to feel that surge of anger or shame or hurt, and then letting it pass through you without anchoring itself to your identity. You begin to say, that's not mine. You begin to believe, that's not about me. And you remind yourself over and over again that how someone treats you is a reflection of them, not proof of your value. You are allowed to observe their dysfunction without making it your fault. You are allowed to love yourself enough not to react every time they push a button. You are allowed to let them be wrong about you. Let them misunderstand. Let them believe their own stories. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You don't have to beg to be seen clearly by someone who refuses to look past their own reflection. Because the truth is, your peace doesn't come from changing how they behave. It comes from changing what you believe about yourself. And once you truly see that their actions are not a verdict on your value, you stop needing their approval. You stop waiting for closure. You stop rewriting your worth based on how they feel about you in any given moment. You start standing tall on your own truth, your own clarity, your own sense of identity. And from that place, their behavior loses its sting. Their manipulation loses its power. Their absence loses its meaning. Because you've stopped measuring your worth on a scale they built to keep you small. So here's what I want you to carry forward from this moment on. You are not too sensitive. You are not too needy. You are not broken or dramatic or hard to love. You are human. You are healing. And you are whole. The next time they try to bait you, pause. Breathe. Say to yourself, this is not about me. And then walk away. Reclaim your space. Reclaim your dignity. Reclaim the calm that belongs to you and only you. That is how you win. Not by fighting, not by explaining, not by begging, but by no longer playing the part they wrote for you. You were never the problem. You were the mirror, and that scared them. Now it's time to break the script and become your own truth. There's something powerful about silence, something that most people overlook in a world that constantly demands noise, explanations, and reactions. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, silence isn't just golden. It's revolutionary. It becomes your sword and your shield. Because here's what you must understand. Narcissists crave reaction. They feed on your emotional responses like fuel. Your anger, your tears, your confusion, your need to defend yourself. It's all a performance they orchestrate. And every time you respond, they know they still have access to your emotions, that they still control the temperature in your world. But when you go quiet, when you choose not to explain, not to fight, not to feed the fire, they lose control. And in that moment, the game begins to fall apart. Silence, you see, isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form. It's saying, I see you, I understand what this is, but I no longer choose to participate. And that choice, that refusal to dance to their chaos, is devastating to someone who thrives on dominating the rhythm. Because narcissists expect a fight. They expect you to scream, to cry, to chase, to prove your worth. And when you don't, when you pause instead of panic, they're left staring at their own emptiness. No reaction, no power. But choosing silence is not just about what you don't say. It's about what you protect. Your energy, your clarity, your dignity. When you stop reacting, you start observing. You start noticing the patterns. You see the manipulation before it fully unfolds. You become less tangled in the emotion and more anchored in awareness. And with that awareness comes choice, the ability to respond from a grounded place, not a triggered one. And yes, at first the silence will feel unnatural, maybe even wrong, because if you've spent years being the one who explains, who defends, who tries to make things right, you'll feel the urge to speak, to justify, to respond. But resist it. Breathe. Stay with yourself. The power you are building in that moment is the power you've been missing for so long. Let's be clear. Silence isn't avoidance. It's not pretending things are okay. It's not running. It's staying still when chaos wants to pull you back in. It's letting the storm rage without stepping outside to get drenched. It's your way of saying, I see the fire, but I refuse to burn with it. And over time, you'll notice something. The more you choose silence, the more clarity you gain, the more centered you become. You're not reacting to everything anymore. You're not living in defense mode. You're grounded, present, unshakable. And the narcissist? They hate that because they can't manipulate someone who's emotionally unavailable to their games. They can't bait someone who isn't hooked by chaos. Your silence becomes your boundary. Your refusal becomes your armor. And with each moment of quiet, you reclaim your space, your breath, your power. But here's what might surprise you. Silence doesn't just affect them, it transforms you. It gives you room to hear your own voice again, to reconnect with the part of you that knows what peace feels like. It's not just about protecting yourself from them, it's about returning to yourself. It's about no longer giving away your calm for someone who doesn't deserve your chaos. And yes, they may accuse you of being distant, cold, uncaring. They'll say you're stonewalling or running away, but they're not mad at your silence. They're mad at your control. They're mad that you're no longer handing over your emotions on command. And let me be clear, you don't owe anyone your emotional availability, especially not someone who has repeatedly disrespected it. Sometimes silence is how you heal. It's how you gather the pieces. It's how you say, this ends here. It's how you step back into your own skin, no longer shaped by the demands of someone who never truly saw you. In silence, you remember what you sound like, what peace feels like, what your truth is when it's not being filtered through fear. So when the next provocation comes, when they try to start the cycle again, pause. Go still. Don't explain. Don't react. Just breathe. Let them feel the absence of your chaos. Let them sit in the echo of their own behavior. Because silence is not the absence of power. It is the very presence of it. And the more you embrace it, the more you'll realize that you never needed to win the argument, prove your point, or earn their understanding. You just needed to stop giving them access. And in that silence, a new story begins. One where your peace is non-negotiable, your energy is sacred, and your worth is no longer a conversation. Letting go is one thing, but cutting emotional ties? That's another level of freedom entirely. See, most people think that detachment is about blocking someone, deleting their number, walking away from the relationship. And yes, those are necessary steps. But if you're still tied to them emotionally, you haven't left. Not really. Because the truth is, you can be miles away from a narcissist and still be tangled up in their web. Of thinking about what they're doing, still wondering if they miss you, still feeling that invisible pull every time a memory surfaces. And that's the hardest part, not the physical distance, but the emotional detachment, the unraveling of something that once felt real, even if it was built on lies. So let me say this with love and clarity. Your peace won't fully return until the emotional bond is broken. And that doesn't happen by force. It happens by truth. By finally seeing the connection for what it really was, not what you hoped it would become. Because with a narcissist, it was never about love. It was about control, possession, convenience. They gave you just enough to keep you invested and took just enough to keep you off balance, and you held on. Not because you didn't see the damage, but because you saw the potential, the what could have been, the version of them that showed up in the beginning or in small flashes of tenderness. But you have to ask yourself now, how long are you willing to live off glimpses of who someone could be while ignoring who they really are? Cutting emotional ties begins with grief, and grief is messy. It's not just about losing them, it's about losing the illusion, the fantasy, the hope. It's mourning a dream that never came true, and that's hard, but it's necessary. Because once you allow yourself to feel the weight of what it really was, you begin to release it. You stop romanticizing the past. You stop blaming yourself. You stop trying to rewrite a story that never honored your soul to begin with. You begin to reclaim your energy, slowly, bravely, beautifully. And with every step, you start recognizing the emotional hooks that once kept you tethered. The guilt, the fear of being alone, the belief that no one else will understand you the way they did. But that's the lie, the most dangerous lie they sold you. Because narcissists are experts at convincing you that they're irreplaceable, that you'll never feel that connection again. But what you had with them wasn't connection. It was dependency. It was emotional instability disguised as intensity. It was manipulation cloaked in attention. And when you finally see that clearly, really see it, you begin to understand that walking away wasn't just brave, It was the first act of self-love in a long time. Detachment doesn't mean you erase the memories. It means you strip them of power. It means you can remember without relapsing. You can reflect without returning. You can feel without drowning. And in that emotional neutrality, you find something sacred, your peace. It's in that stillness that you hear your voice again, the one that was buried under their demands, the one that whispered, "This doesn't feel right," long before you had the courage to act on it. That voice is yours, and it's the only one you need to follow now. And yes, there may be lonely nights, days where your mind drifts back, where you wonder if they ever really cared. But I promise you, your healing isn't measured by how often you think of them, but by how little you let those thoughts control you. You are allowed to miss the person. You are allowed to miss the moments, but you are not required to return to the pain. Missing something doesn't mean it belongs in your life. You are not the same person who tolerated the chaos. You are growing now, evolving, healing, and that healing demands space. Space from the noise, space from the old patterns, space from the emotional strings they once pulled so easily. So give yourself permission to let go, not just physically, but emotionally. Cut the cords, grieve the ending, forgive yourself for staying too long, and then rise. Not to prove anything, not to show them what they lost, but because your soul is finally light enough to fly. Because this moment where you choose your wholeness over their presence, this is the beginning of your freedom. No more living in reaction, no more waiting for apologies that will never come. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. You are done. And in this new space, you'll discover something deeper than closure. You'll find clarity. You'll find peace. You'll find you. The one who survived, the one who's still standing, the one who no longer needs to be chosen because you finally chose yourself. This is not the end of a chapter. It's the start of a new life, one where your value is no longer negotiable, one where your heart is guarded not by walls, but by wisdom, one where you don't need anyone to complete you, because you've remembered that you were never broken. You were just waiting to come home to yourself, and now you're here. So if no one has told you lately, let me be the one to say it. I see how hard it's been. I see the strength it took to keep showing up, to keep loving, to keep hoping, even when the weight felt unbearable. You didn't deserve the pain, but you do deserve the peace. And it's finally within reach. Not because they changed, but because you did. Because you're learning to love yourself more deeply than the approval you used to chase. Because you've stopped asking for permission to be whole. And for that, for your bravery, your honesty, your healing, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for staying with yourself. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having the courage to grow through what tried to break you. This journey isn't easy, but it's worth it, and you are never alone on the path. So keep going. Keep choosing yourself. Keep walking toward the version of you who no longer explains, no longer proves, no longer begs, just is strong, soft, whole, and free. And from my heart to yours, thank you for spending this time with me. I'm proud of you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay true, and above all, stay free.